Right on cue there in terms of the recording. So it's great to be here this morning, everyone. Thank you so much. What we'll do at times, I'll jump on and off the camera because I know that sometimes due to the numbers, it can affect the bandwidth and the presentation. And the main thing is you can all see me, which is great, and Orla, who's here today as well. But we want to make sure that the slides are not impacted or any of the session. So great that you can see me now, and I might just jump on and off the camera just at certain times during today's session. So we're here for an hour in terms of building that supportive culture for menopause in the workplace. You will see on your screen, hopefully we're all familiar with Zoom, but you'll see on your screen question and answers. We will be looking at all of those, as many questions as you guys have, or as many as we can fit in the hour. If not, then we'll get back in touch with you directly. If you're not comfortable posting those questions, at this stage only myself can see those, and I'll just go through and field all of those questions. If you would prefer to have a confidential chat, remember we're not mentioning names anyway in those questions. It might be a hypothetical question that you have if you were to have an employee, for example, but if you would prefer to have that one-to-one after the session, then please don't hesitate to get in touch, and we'll put up the contact details at the end anyway. But super and great to see everyone here today. So let's get started. Hi everyone. I am Natalie from Beyond HR, Director for GB in Scotland, and we are looking at this topic today. We've got Orla as well, who is our tech guru and marketing and can assist. It's quite difficult, as you know, to do these sessions. Hi Orla, to do these sessions and to multitask at the same time, keeping an eye on the polls, the question and answers, the slides, everything that's happening. So thanks Orla for coming along today. For anyone that's just jumped on as well, we're just recording today's session as well, just to let you know. And if you get any particular questions, post those in the Q&A. You'll see that wee part that you have the icon just to post anything that you want to ask. We may deal with some questions throughout, or we may keep them until the end. We'll just keep an eye on what's coming through to see what's better for the flow. So yeah, we are getting an increase in queries on menopause. We held, in terms of Scotland, held its first menopause in the workplace conference in Edinburgh in April. Myself and Orla were involved in that, which was fabulous. Beyond HR were actually asked to chair the event, which was great. And there was a lot that was being talked about. So we just thought actually it's quite good to come back and to educate. We're hearing a lot in the media and stuff as well about it all, but it would be good to educate our businesses in terms of looking at that supportive culture for menopause in the workplace. But the biggest thing, and if I was to look down the list and see, it would be good to know the kind of male-female split, but loud and clear, and it is being misinterpreted. Menopause is a workplace issue, not a women's issue. In today's society, in today's world, even more so, when you hear me talking about menopause, you will click on that I'm talking about menopausal individuals rather than menopausal employees or menopausal, women. We're not talking about women, we're talking about individuals, or we're talking about employees. And that's just a sign of today's society, because we cannot forget about those that are maybe transgender, etc., going through some kind of change, that also may be going through some of the stages of menopause. We're also not just talking about those that are, and we'll share some of the stats, we're not just also talking today about those that are in the 50 plus category. We're also talking about those individuals in their 20s that have maybe, for surgical reasons, post-surgery reasons, have been put into some kind of chemical menopause or are going through menopause as well due to other surgery. So it would be great to say that we're just looking, and for many people, they may have thought, don't need this today because I don't have any over 50 women in my workplace. And I would love to let them know that actually it's a workplace issue impacting more than just 50-year-old women. And it's not just that women's issue, it's about those other individuals as well. So we'll be clear that that we're talking about menopausal individuals or menopausal employees on today's session as well. But this is where the mindset has to change, I guess. And I don't have a poll for that, but I've loved to ask the question today in terms of how many people would have thought this was just all about women today. Okay, so that's where we are. Some of the stats, but before we start, I do like a bit of interaction. And what percentage of individuals are still in the workplace that are going through the menopause? Orla, can everyone see the poll okay?
Yeah, it's gone up for me.
Great. Oh, there, see all the answers coming in as well. So we've either got 60% or 80%. So what percentage of individuals are still in the workplace that are going through the menopause? A couple of votes still to come in. What are your thoughts? Is it 60 or is it higher at that 80%? And we'll be able to share some of those findings as well. Still a few to come in. Fingers on the buzzers. What is it there for you? Okay, great. So the majority of people are saying that 60% and 20% of the audience are saying 80%. So that's quite interesting, and we'll see why in a moment. So 60% was our answer from today's session. Okay, so when we have a look at the statistics, why does it actually matter? Why are we all here? Okay, we'll see over here 8 out of 10 menopausal employees are still in the workplace. Shocking statistic, not shocking, but shocking from our poll this morning as well, and quite a surprise. Most people probably would have thought that 6 out of 10, and that was what our poll suggested this morning as well, but it's actually 8 out of 10 individuals are still in the workplace. So this is why it matters, and this is why I guess you're all on today's session, and this is why there is an increase in queries and people wanting to be a bit more educated in terms of what it's all about. So menopausal women, and as we said, that was the stat that came out, but we've changed that to menopausal employees, are the fastest growing demographic in the workforce across the UK. Symptoms can last between 4 and 8 years, and the average age of menopausal is 51. But 1 in 3 in the workplace will be in that 50 over 50 category as well. I'm going to just turn off the camera now if that's okay, but definitely here, and we'll pop on and off at times, but you'll still be able to hear me just for the bandwidth. So yeah, that average age is 51, but as we said, there will be individuals within your workplace that might be in their 20s, 30s or 40s as well. And that statistic that, yeah, very soon, in the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 1 in 3 in the workplace will be over 50. 1 in 4 could experience serious symptoms, and we'll go on to talk about what those might be. And 8 out of 10, our stat there, are still in the workplace. So the others have retired, given up work, or haven't worked, but 8 out of 10 of those will still be in the workplace. And 3 out of 4 will experience symptoms. So 1 in 4 will experience those serious symptoms, but 3 out of 4 individuals will experience symptoms. We hear the chat every day, oh, I'm going through the menopause, etc. What are your symptoms? But there will be for those individuals in the workplace, people that maybe are going through it as well, that have no symptoms and feel the need not to declare it then. The scary stats and the not surprising, but the doom and gloom in terms of 10% of women who worked during the menopause have left a job due to their symptoms. 80% of women say their employer hadn't shared information, trained staff, or put in place a menopause absence policy. You guys are all here today, so that is a start in terms of the times are changing and people do want to be more aware of it. And almost 50% of women haven't even approached their GPs about this as well. So just some stats in terms to bring this all to life and to see in terms of why it has such a significant impact on business at the moment. We know and hear of a lot of the symptoms, obviously the most typical symptoms being that sleep disturbance, their psychological issues, and many employees have reported feeling like a different person, really, or don't speak to me before 10 o'clock in the morning, we've heard, or the most recent one that we've heard is I just want to smother my husband in his bed at night, which is very obviously laughing, but in terms of how people are feeling, those psychological issues and their mood swings, etc., hot flushes and headaches, night sweats, all are items in terms of those irregular periods or heavy and light periods, muscle and joint stiffness, aches and pains, recurrent UTI infections, weight gain, palpitations, skin changes, any reduced sex drive, etc. as well. So there are a lot of different symptoms out there, and as we know, obviously, and we'll talk about this a bit further, it's individual. Not everyone is going to experience all of these symptoms, and there may be differences, sleep disturbance between people just maybe having an hour unrest during the night to women, individuals, employees lying awake until 4 in the morning, etc. So that does have to have ultimately some impact on business and productivity and day-to-day tasks and even concentration within the workplace as well. The challenges that we face, obviously, the challenges on the workplace and in the workplace that we have is 14 million. It is estimated that 14 million working days each year are lost due to the menopause. That's a significant amount. 9 out of 10 menopausal women or individuals, as we said, all the stats and all the research and all the stuff that's coming back does relate to women. We need to change that mindset. 9 out of 10 women say their symptoms impact their work, particularly brain fog, tiredness, loss of energy, and confidence. And you may be thinking right now, oh, I wonder if that is such and such employee in my business. And we'll go on to talk about that. 1 in 4 say that they don't feel supported by their manager. 1 in 3 hide their symptoms at work for fear of losing their jobs. And unfortunately, 1 out of 10, 1 in every 10, or 10% have quit their jobs due to all of the items and the lack of support and everything that they've not had from their employer. So significant, that 14 million is fairly worrying. Now, when we look at support in the workplace, that we always get queries and questions on what can we do to support, what is there, and there are many good things that are happening out there, and I would encourage you to absolutely share those as well. Some of the items that we have been guiding on, we're hearing a lot about Menopause Cafe, and it was really interesting at the Menopause in the Workplace conference in Edinburgh in April, that actually, if it's not already, Menopause Cafe is actually a trademark now, so we are unable to use that terminology, but you might call it something else. Just the Menopause Cafe will soon be, if it's not already that trademarked, but we can work with you to think about, or you can talk to people in your organisation to think about what you could call. So a drop-in, and actually in a lot of organisations, these support groups have came from within. So employees have got together to say, can we put together a drop-in session? This is what it would be about. And actually, when those ideas come from employees, then fabulous, much better than you trying to put these in place together. And the success rate of these will be far higher than you putting them into place. But it might be something that you might need to consider. So menopause drop-ins, whatever that may be, half an hour over a coffee in a private place for people just to have a rant, to have a chat, to maybe help the workforce or managers understand a wee bit more about what's going on as well, or a chance for one-to-ones as well. And that may also involve bringing in a speaker, that might be bringing in a local charity, or it might be something to do with supporting those individuals, so maybe a counsellor or a charity, like we said, that supports menopause, etc. So that's what we are looking at in terms of that. Educating the workforce is the biggest challenge at the moment. We are seeing, hearing and knowing that it's still a bit of a taboo subject, isn't it? It absolutely is. And we need to make sure that how are other people dealing with it? How are employees themselves dealing with it? How are their peers dealing with it? How are their managers dealing with it? Do they know all of the symptoms? Do they know what maybe an individual is going through? And do they know how to reach out and offer support and help? And we'll talk about that a bit further as well. And those support communities, so those communities might be a peer group, but offering and encouraging, regardless of menopause or anything else that anyone is going through, mental health is the next item that has came from the pandemic, and menopause could be linked to mental health. There could also be other items linked to mental health, and it's probably something that you're already thinking about in terms of those supporting communities within your organisation. How are you pulling together people going through common issues to help support each other as well? So it's something that's definitely on the agenda and on the radar for many businesses in terms of forming these groups, whether these are maybe mental health groups, whether it's a bereavement group, whether whatever that may be, in terms of support for those different communities, and maybe pigeonholing those employees into these categories to then set up support groups and to go away and to do their own thing would be fantastic. Some companies have a good bit to go there. How do we fit it into the business day? Absolutely understand. How do we get people to bring ideas through? How does it not affect productivity if we've got certain projects and deadlines and tasks? Absolutely. But those are all things that can absolutely be worked around. Forums as well, whether it's an online forum, whether it's, again, a forum group, focus groups, whatever that is, again, it ties in with the support in terms of the communities. Walking groups has been talked about as well, all the research, and but it's individual. A walk for someone might be hell. It might not be welcomed. It might not be any support for them, but walking groups has been encouraged as well, and all your wellbeing events. So if you're having a look at your calendar for the rest of the year for your different wellbeing events, a week of mental health, maybe look at a week of supporting menopause in the workplace as well. And if you're not sure what that looks like, we can absolutely guide and help you in terms of what that is as well. So all of these items that can be support, and the education piece for us is big at the moment, and training your line managers to be able to have these conversations. But we'll talk a wee bit more about the logistics and how that can work and can actually be put into practice as well. And menopause and the law. So it's not, when we're hearing quite a lot of movement around menopause and the law, and we're hearing a lot of groups trying to push through Parliament further activities and further suggestions for menopause in the workplace. It's not currently a protected characteristic under the Equality Act. So when we look at the Equality Act, we're looking at age, sex, gender, disability, etc., which means that legally these people have added protection for various items in HR and employment law, and menopause is not one of those. However, an employee could make a claim in relation to their age, their gender, their sex, where it is related to the menopause, and it's already under the Equality Act as well. Policy is not yet mandatory, but it certainly is advisable when we are having a look at businesses' handbooks, employee handbooks, or updating handbooks. We are pushing in a menopause in the workplace policy as well. And our next poll in terms of that, how many out there have had or are thinking, but at the moment, how many have a menopause policy in the workplace at the moment? Okay, a couple more moments just before we end the poll. How many have a menopause policy at the moment? Okay, so not kind of surprised with this statistic, 73%. No, I need one, and that's okay. We've got our contact details at the end, and please get in touch if you want to have a sample menopause policy that you can adapt or discuss. And 27%, great, already have one in place. Okay, kind of where we thought it would be, but still worth asking the question and good for us to know at this side. So 73% still need one. Okay, super. So where we are looking at is those reasonable adjustments. Okay, so as we said, policy is not yet mandatory, but advisable. Reasonable adjustments. So regardless, I think we need to be careful. Don't focus your effort and energy really on, is it protected under the Quality Act? Is it not? Is it disability? Focus on is what are the reasonable adjustments and what can we do to help and support. We'll look at where it has went wrong and we'll look at what we need to be thinking about. A lot of companies are thinking or working or worried on too much focus on, is it a disability? Is it protected under the Equality Act? Let's just take it that it is, and what else can we do to help and support as well? Okay, so reasonable adjustments, and remember the word is reasonable, and it's a really difficult area. We know that and we appreciate that, and we have a lot of conversations over these reasonable adjustments. What's reasonable to you? What's reasonable to us? What would the law say in terms of reasonable? What can we do day to day? Some of the items, maybe the person in the morning is just not worth anything, so having a bit of a later start. Those that can work from home on certain days, having a fan, changing on their desk, changing where they even sit in the office is quite a big one at the moment, so that they're not sitting where the sun is beating down on them. Looking at their workload, lots and lots of different items that we've had to work with clients to try and see in terms of those reasonable adjustments, and finding out when they do feel more on top of their game and most productive in the day as well would be great knowledge for you to have. And remember, when we are dealing with reasonable adjustments, the best person to ask would be the individual that's going through menopause or perimenopause and all the different stages of the menopause that they have. But this is where it's forgotten about. Remember, we're not GPs, we're not experts. We don't know what each individual is going through because it's very much on an individual basis. And that's where it moves to that no one size fits all approach. So finding out from the individual what's happening. And remember, symptoms will go, they'll come back, they'll maybe add on more symptoms that they're experiencing, but we're not GPs and we're not experts, and sometimes we might need that extra help. In most cases, through health related instances, we do need that extra help, whether that's GP or that's occupational health, to help and guide us. But actually sitting down with the individual is a stage that's missed out. What are you going through? What are you feeling? How are things? And it's okay to have those conversations. Many businesses fear that you're maybe intruding, or you're asking items that you shouldn't, or you're being too nosy, but you have that overriding duty of care. Remember those health and safety obligations, ensuring everyone's health, safety and welfare at work. So we need to be mindful that actually, yeah, we're asking the questions, but we're asking them from that duty of care. And if we have that certain relationship with individuals, then those conversations are completely okay. Those conversations are good to have and will be welcomed. And we can really find out how someone is feeling, what's happening, and then work on to move with those reasonable adjustments as well. But it also might be in terms of in health and safety is not my bag, unfortunately, and today's session is not on health and safety, but it may lead you to looking at a risk assessment for an individual based on this, and looking at some adaptations. And again, if you need any help and support on risk assessments, then please don't hesitate to give us a wee call and we can talk you through what that might look like as well. Okay, so that's maybe some kind of health and safety item to think about in relation to it all, as well as the HR and employment law. And learn from where it's went wrong as well. So we'll be talking about some certain real life cases, and this is really where it comes to life for us in terms of what's went wrong, what's happened so far, and how can we learn from all of those. But we do need to be mindful of all the tribunal cases that have went through, some successful, some unsuccessful as well, and learning from those particular cases to see how we move forward and how we're maybe able to handle it. And just running advice by anyone, whoever you currently use, whether it's yourself or anyone else at the moment, to make sure each step of the way that you're taking the advice as well. Okay, but yeah, it's important to be thinking about the reasonable adjustments rather than, is it a disability, is it not a disability, etc. Okay, and where is it went wrong? So I want to spend the next bit of time in terms of looking at some cases of where it has went wrong in the workplace. And as we said, these are real life cases. You will see, for those that were able to get the compensation amounts, and we will be able to talk through what's went wrong and then maybe some learnings for yourselves as well. From today as well, the slides will be available and a recording as well from today's session if you do have to recap on any of this. So don't worry about taking too many notes, as you'll be getting everything later as well. Okay, so our first case that we will be looking at is our Davies versus Scottish Courts and Tribunal Service. And you will see in big writing, in terms of the compensatory amount here was £14,000 for unfair dismissal, and the employee was also reinstated back into the workplace. Okay, so just some facts in the case, and then we'll go through the points as well. So Mrs. Davies was a court officer. She'd been employed for 20 years by Scottish Courts and Tribunal Service, and she is important to know she had a flawless record, nothing absolutely on file. She was going through the menopause, and her symptoms included heavy bleeding, feeling fuzzy, feeling emotional, and she was severely anemic. And day to day in the workplace, this did affect her concentration levels. She was referred by a clinic, and she took her hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, which slightly helped with the bleeding. When the managers became aware of their condition, they did make helpful adjustments to her working practices and let her work in rooms like closer to the toilets. She no longer covered jury court, and she was no longer undertaking male duties. So they did make those reasonable adjustments. She was prescribed medication, and it was diluted in water, which she drank. She took the medication to work with her to drink during the day. And at one point she left the courtroom. She discovered that the water jug on her table hadn't been emptied, but she could not remember if she had diluted the medication in it yet. Okay, so the water had been gone, the jug was gone. She thought, oh no, was my medication actually in that jug? And has someone drunk it? What's happened? She shortly found two men drinking the water, and she approached them obviously and asked them, and they were asking why they should be concerned. She told them that she had her medication in here and it might have been in the water. But she refused at that time to say what that medication was for. One of the men became quite irate and concerned, obviously, what he had been drinking. So their team obviously had to take some advice and see what the medication was and get some advice in terms of any of the potential risks of drinking it. Later that day, they did advise the men of what their findings were, and the water would have turned pink and changed the taste of the water if the medication had been present. So it hadn't been present in that water at that particular time. They compiled their health and safety report, and there was no immediate risks to health and safety. Some comments were there, giving various opinions about her involvement in the incident, and reached the conclusion that Mrs. Davies would have clearly known that the medication was not present and that she showed no remorse for her actions. So Scottish courts, we know where this one's going, and Tribunal Service held their formal disciplinary procedure, and they had their occupational health report, which was obtained as well, which is good. They went and got that report, and it found that the condition caused, and amongst other things, amnesia. She was having brain fog. She was having spouts of losing her memory. And despite this, the disciplinary found that she had misled the men into believing that that medication was present, and she was dismissed. Obviously, Miss Davies brought claims of unfair dismissal and disability arising from her menopause, and that discriminatory claim arising from the disability. Okay, so quite a funny one to think about. Absolutely not funny in terms of real life. So the claim was for discrimination due to her disability, and they dismissed her for that conduct. So the conduct saying that she must have known that that liquid contained the medication. The tribunal found that her conduct had been affected by her symptoms, that amnesia, the brain fog, and the loss of being able to remember items. And it was found that there was unfavourable treatment of menopausal staff previously resulted in successful sex and age discrimination claims as well. So the employee was awarded the £14,000 for unfair dismissal, and she was reinstated. She got her job back as well. The tribunal found her symptoms amounted to a disability, and she was also awarded £5,000 in respect of injury to feelings as well, which is just another item to consider. For discrimination claims, you can have an additional compensatory amount for injury to feelings. Okay, so obviously it's important here, remember that menopause, as we said, it's not itself a disability. However, in certain cases with severe symptoms, it was agreed by the tribunal that she was disabled. So in order for it to be a disability, remember, it has to have a long-term, lasting negative impact on day-to-day life. So long-term would be looking at likely or has lasted more than 12 months and a day-to-day impact on life. So that might include being able to remember getting dressed in the morning, being able to remember to put the kettle on in the morning, or have I put the kettle on, forgetting any of the items, getting dressed, going out for a walk, coming to work, carrying out your role, would all be impacted by potential menopausal symptoms as well. Okay, so that's where one of the cases where it has went wrong. Just a couple of additional items that are quite helpful to know. The health and safety report went far beyond its remit, and the comments about Miss Davies tainted this disciplinary process, resulting in it being unfair. So be very mindful of this. The health and safety report should just focus on the facts and no other opinion. The disciplinary panel didn't take into account her memory loss, her confusion, and her stress in deciding whether she knew the medication was present or not. They didn't even take that into account, which is one of the biggest factors. And the dismissal was because of the confusion and stress arising from her disability. So we need to be very careful, obviously, of claims arising in this nature as well, and watch out for symptoms and then scenarios that result as a consequence of these symptoms as well, which could lead to discrimination or could lead to harassment, or a failure to make reasonable adjustments as well. So that's quite an important one and quite a good one to talk about today in terms of where it's went wrong. Our next one is Merchant versus BT PLC as well here. And we have unfortunately, no compensatory amounts here, which we do like talking about. And this one, BT, large corporate, still managed to get it wrong. So this employee alleged that she'd been discriminated against on the grounds of gender when her employer failed to deal with her menopausal symptoms in the same way that they would have dealt with other medical conditions. And this is important, and we'll talk about this in our summary as well. So she was underperforming in her role. She was not ahead of the game, and she was going through a performance and a capability process and had been through the process right up until that final written warning. The issues in her performance were continuing, and they were deciding at this stage whether to offer her alternative employment or to potentially dismiss. The employee provided they got a letter from her GP during the discussions, and they went to the GP and got a report, which was good. And the GP advised that it can affect her level of concentration at times, and that also she was suffering from stress due to being a carer at home for 2 members of her family. So another significant impact that they were looking at. The performance management process was in place, and said that obviously they did have to look at an investigation as to whether this was in relation to the health factors as well. However, despite this, management did not go on to do this. They decided to investigate or not investigate the possible impact of the menopause, which they should have done, the possible impact of her duties at home and the stress that that could cause as well. So they chose to ignore, and they chose instead just to dismiss following that final written warning. Her manager was aware she was suffering from symptoms of the menopause. Her manager was aware that this could affect her level and was affecting her level of concentration, and her manager dismissed her without carrying out those further medical conditions around the symptoms. A GP said that that should have been investigated. They chose not to proceed, so therefore obviously it's going to be scrutinised at an employment tribunal as well. And the tribunal upheld claims of sex discrimination and unfair dismissal. And to be noted, obviously, discriminatory claims have no upper level and are uncapped. So it's down to the judge on the day as well to decide what that would be as well in terms of any compensation. And the tribunal held that the manager's approach was irrational. Of course it was, and he wouldn't have adopted this approach with other non-female related conditions, so not dealing with it as a health condition. When we are looking at all of the case law that's coming through, it does repeatedly show that we as a business need to look at medical information, take this into account, particularly in capability and performance issues where ill health has been raised by the employee. We cannot ignore it, and that will normally involve taking advice from a GP or experts in terms of work health as well. So it's important to remember their fair process as well. So there was some steps missed out here, and as a side issue as well, their process talked about going to a GP and following a process and investigating health issues, and they didn't do any of that. So again, they tripped themselves up in terms of their own policy and their own processes as well. So a good one to look at, but unfortunately no compensatory amounts. And our final one to look at would be A versus Bon Marsh Limited. And the claims against, oh, there's Alexa talking to me on my Siri on my watch. And the tribunal upheld claims of sex and age discrimination. So for this one, when we are looking again, another unsuccessful by the employer and successful by the employee. So more on this particular case. So when we're looking here, this was a 2019 case, and the claimant, A, to be known as, stated that she'd been subjected to harassment and abuse over a continuous period because she was female and because she was going through the menopause. She had, again, a long-standing, similar to the first case, a long-standing good record, but she was suffering from symptoms. She felt that she was being unduly criticised, she was being humiliated by her supervisor, and she did manage to provide many examples of this in her evidence. She had a statement of the impact on her health and well-being and information from her GP as well. Her line manager refused to discuss her menopause issues or offer any help or any support. She escalated this, but she was told not to take any further action and it would be dealt with. But again, nothing happened from this. Ultimately, unfortunately, she had a breakdown and she needed time off work. She eventually on a return agreed some phased return to work in shorter hours. Our line manager stepped in after her first week back and withdrew these, and at which point she knew that she could not go on anymore. Her manager also referred to her as a dinosaur, and that's particular in her sex and age harassment claim here as well. She resigned. She was off sick for 9 months due to depression, anxiety, and she had to take a lower paid job at that particular time as well. So again, the judge looked again back to the definition of the Equality Act. They understood she had some specific health issues, and they advised obviously that they felt in no doubt that the respondent, Bon Marsh, was guilty of harassment as well. They created a hostile environment for the claimant in relation to her status as a woman. And she was also obviously going through the menopause, and they were not happy with that. The judge considered this amount to unlawful harassment on the grounds of age and sex. On one occasion, the line manager also criticised her for failing to staple together 2 pieces of paper relating to this, to her being menopausal. So he was joking, but it wasn't in with a combination of everything, the dinosaur, the comments, not taking into account what she needed. HR obviously advised of the reduction in her working hours. He totally kiboshed all of that. He also refused to adjust the temperature in the shop, taking into account her requirements again. So there was a successful claim there as well. And the claimant was awarded £10,000 for loss of wages and £18,000 for injury to feelings as well. Okay. So again, another important case of where it's went wrong. And as we said, it's important to know these in terms of where it has went wrong, and that's a significant nearly £28,000 for this one, and lots of lessons to be learned as well. It's not a subject to dismiss. Managers need to be prepared to have those productive conversations. There needs to be clear guidelines and clear training for managers on how to have those right conversations. And we are being asked about having some of those training sessions with managers because it's important. There needs to be policies and procedures, obviously, to make sure that managers are adhering to these. And just make sure, if you do, for those that answered about menopause in the workplace, having a policy in place, make sure to go back, and it doesn't just relate to women, would be a pointer from today as well. And we need to make sure that obviously employees are comfortable talking and knowing and are being supported in these environments. And if we don't do that, then we do know that it will be costly, not only for the money value that we've seen, but obviously reputational damage and everything as well for not being able to have a look. So we've got many cases. We talked about the merchant, we've talked about the Scottish courts and tribunals, and the cost is significant for ignoring any of these as well. So what do we need to do? So hopefully from those cases, building and sustaining those relationships. If we're worried about an employee speaking out, look at the relationship, look at the manager, who's the best person to have that conversation with them. And if we build and sustain those relationships, then those conversations will just happen naturally. Providing knowledge, clarity and guidance. What is the menopause? What are the potential symptoms? How can we help and support? What does an individual need? An individual, remember, not the whole workforce. What does that individual need? Their symptoms are X, Y, and Z. They are asking for, let's go and get some additional help and support from GP or Rock Health to see what that advice needs to be, what adjustments could be, and let's get the help and support from the experts, because we're not GPs and we're not experts, and we do not know the full range of reasonable adjustments that we can do. Be comfortable handling those conversations, absolutely. You'll probably find once you've had those conversations, everyone breathes a sigh of release in terms of, right, that's good, we know. What do we do to move forward now? Let's get some help and support as we know ourselves, and let's have these conversations as well. And training those managers to have the conversations. Many are probably fearful over what can I say, what can't I say, can I mention the word? And where it has went wrong recently is maybe people mentioning the word and then it goes wrong. Are you suffering from the menopause? What's wrong with you? Are you menopausal? It's maybe not the best way to deal with things, but having a proper sit down and finding out what's happening and getting the trust for then the employee to then maybe say, I think it might be, or employer, when the time is right, to maybe point out, do you think you maybe need to go to your GP, etc. as well. What we're finding as well is many people are not, many individuals are not reporting or not disclosing. There's two things to think about: for fear, but also they're not disclosing because maybe they think they're handling it okay, and what about it? They're just going through something and they don't have to disclose. It's still nice, obviously, if an employee does disclose, because then we might see a change in behaviour, characteristics. A lot of our conversations are mainly at the moment where the employee maybe has not disclosed, but the manager knows the person well and can see there's different changes, and that might not be in performance, it might just be in behavior or mannerisms or looking a bit more stressed throughout the day. So it would be good to get to a stage that managers can have those conversations as well. Creating that menopause friendly workplace, so looking at your wellbeing strategy, where does your menopause week feature, what are you doing, and maybe having a full action plan in place as well to think about that, not just for menopause but for all different areas as well. Mental health, pick that, pick different areas that you want to create that friendly working and environment. Create and communicate your policy. As we said, don't just look at it on women, we're looking at as individuals and employees, so go away and change the language as well, and be careful of stating all the symptoms, because the symptoms may just keep changing or may be different for individuals as well. And the important, manage it like a health issue. Now, the CIPD report, the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, report that when we get to treating menopause like any other health issue, that's when we will be there. And we know that we have such a big gap and a big distance to go for that, to just have menopause to be treated like a normal health issue in the workplace. It does still have that certain taboo, but we're getting there. But when we're able to manage it and treat it like a normal health issue, then we will have succeeded. A list of just some useful resources from today as well, and we'll be sending over the slides that you can click in. We have some resources. You'll be able obviously to get access to the recording as well. It will also be up on our website, and all of the slides, and a template if you're looking for or want to put something together if you're unsure and want to chat over the policy or what you need to be doing as well. If you're unsure about those risk assessments as well, we can put you onto our health and safety team. And if you're worried about reasonable adjustments or spotting the signs, then absolutely give us a shout. So hopefully that has been a very quick rundown. Just in terms of our final question, and then we'll go on to some contact details. How many of you are feeling more confident in dealing with menopause in the workplace? Yes, you've learned loads. I've actually bamboozled your mind and I've given you lots to think about. Or help, when can I call you? Great, and I'll just let that poll come in and hopefully able to. Super, okay, so most people have learned loads, and obviously I've been throwing lots of information, lots of snapshots. If you want more or talk through those cases as well, absolutely. We've talked about where it's went wrong. There have been ones that an employer has been able to stand over, which is great, and it would be good to know what they did as well in comparison. But most people today, lots to think about, lots to go away. And thank you for joining our masterclass. We'll just see if there's any questions. We've got 10 minutes left for any questions that you may have posted. And if you want to get in contact, there are our details there. email address and our website. We're on LinkedIn as well if you want to follow Beyond HR there. And we are supporting startups, larger organisations and SMEs in the UK, Scotland, England and Northern Ireland in terms of all of their HR issues. And if you need any on-site support, we're also able to do that, or any documentation in terms of when is your handbook and contract last been looked at. Do you need to know about upcoming changes that are happening? But we are an outsourced HR service. Many of you that I see today are clients, which is fabulous. If you're feeling a bit overwhelmed with the topic, no problem. We can have further conversations and further chats on all of this today. Or if you feel you maybe need some more in-house training, then please give us a shout. So just any time for any questions really that we might have. I'll start the camera again so that you can see, but is there any questions that we can have a look? If anyone wants to post any questions, those will just start coming through to me that we're maybe able to answer, that the presentation maybe hasn't answered for you today as well. I'll just give it a few minutes for those to come through. Okay, so our first question here, do we always have to go to occupational health or GP if we are dismissing an employee that's maybe suffering from the menopause? Absolutely, and regardless of any menopause or any health issue, it's extremely advisable that you have some medical backup there to give us some information, to give you some information in terms of what the next steps should be, and if there's any other reasonable adjustments or any other further support that you should be thinking of. So in most cases, very, very few will be a fair dismissal if you have not taken those steps to go through as well. So thanks for that question as well. Any other questions coming through? Okay, I'll just pick another here. An interesting one. Can we support both male and female line managers with training in the workplace? Can we do this in a group setting altogether, or should we do it in different sessions? No, absolutely, great question there. When we're looking at menopause, again, our first slide was, remember, it's a workplace issue, not a women's issue. So absolutely, it's about the individual. Train line managers regardless of sex. If they're a line manager managing a team, then absolutely we would be advising that everybody is trained in terms of your line managers. In group settings, yeah, in smaller groups, online, face-to-face, whatever is best for yourself. It doesn't matter. We can have a chat in terms of what that could look like for your business as well. Oh, great. And not a question, but interested in the risk assessment link that we could provide later. Absolutely, just get in touch, drop me a wee email for some further information on the risk assessment in terms of helping support and what that might. That's not a bother at all. Just give us a wee, drop us a wee message on the email there, and we'll get you some advice and a bit of a call to talk through the risk assessment as well. Super, great. Well, that is us. There's no other questions that come through. As we said, if you've got any other questions, then please just get in touch or drop us an email as well. It was great to see you all today. It's been a big whistle-stop tour. We probably